Welcome, traveler of time. Tonight, you and I embark on a long, unhurried journey through the corridors of history. Not the history you find in school books with hurried dates and dry facts, but the kind that moves gently, like a candle flicker in a drafty old library. This is your time to rest and to drift, even as your mind wanders through centuries past. Before we begin, I invite you to find a comfortable position, whether you are lying in bed, sitting in a favorite chair, or wrapped in a blanket in the quiet corner of your room. Feel the weight of your body sinking deeper into the surface beneath you. Let your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. Soften your gaze. You will not rush. There will be no urgency here. Only the slow turning of pages, the patient unfolding of stories, and the soft hum of time passing. If your mind drifts, that is perfectly fine. Let my voice fade in and out as you wander through your own landscapes of thought. You are not here to memorize anything. You are here to be carried along. As we travel together, you may hear the creak of a wooden floor, the scratching of a quill on parchment, or the faint toll of a distant bell. Let these sounds be your companions, guiding you into deeper calm now. Settle in. Our journey begins not with a battle or a crown, but with something much quieter. The story of a small, forgotten village where history barely whispers, yet still shapes the world. Close your eyes, take a slow breath in, and let it out. First chapter awaits. It is the year 1324, though. Here in the far reaches of the countryside, the number matters very little. The village of Greyford rests on the edge of a slow, winding river. Its houses are built of weathered timber and uneven stone, their roofs sagging slightly under the weight of age. Moss creeps up the walls, softening the lines between man's work and nature's patience. The mornings here are cool, heavy with mist that clings to the grass and swirls in the shallow hollows between the cottages. The air smells faintly of damp earthwood smoke and the sweet temps of drying hay. Few travelers pass through Greyford. The road that once brought merchants and messengers has long been overgrown, its stones pushed aside by stubborn roots. To leave the village is to step into uncertainty, and so most never do. The people live quietly, almost rhythmically. In the early hours, the baker rises before the sun, the sound of his kneading echoing in the stillness. The shepherd guides his small flock to the meadow, his old dog padding faithfully beside him. Somewhere behind a crooked door, an old woman hums as she grinds herbs into powder remedies for ailments that have been passed down for generations. Nothing here is urgent. The seasons are the village's only clock, and even they turn slowly. Yet within Greyford's quiet, there is a sense of something preserved, as though time itself has decided to rest here for a while, folding its hands and watching the days pass. And it is here in this almost forgotten place that our first small thread of history will begin to unwind. The midday sun is warm on Ayla's shoulders as she gathers herbs at the edge of the village. Her basket is already half full, fragrant with the smell of summer. Rosemary, sage, a few blooms of lavender. She hums softly, her fingers brushing against tired, familiar roots. Beyond the last cottage, the river gray winds into the trees, its surface a shimmering, almost liquid mirror. Ayla pauses, her gaze drifting to the water. She can hear the splash of a fish just below the surface, see the ripple of its passing in the oily sheen of sunlight. But beyond that movement, there is a stillness. A stillness that holds secrets just beneath its surface. Secrets that have been kept safe for a long time. Ayla returns to the village with the setting sun, stepping over the threshold of her home. Just as the sky begins to bruise with the colors of twilight, inside the air is cooler, darker. An oil lamp has been lit, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. Her mother sits at a small table, a worn book in her lap. She looks up as Isla enters, her face creased with both wisdom and worry. "Did you find what you needed, child?" she asks, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves. Isla nods, setting her basket on the table. "All but one," she says, reaching for a dried leaf, holding it up between them. "I could not find feverfew in all the usual places. It must have been gathered already." Her mother's brow furrows. "Feverfew, a rare herb, its use even rarer." "That is strange," she murmurs, more to herself than her daughter. Isla knows that look. She sets the leaf down, knowing better than to press her mother further. But as she watches her gather up the herbs, carefully sorting them with practiced hands, a thought occurs to her. Perhaps it was no accident that the feverfew was gone. Perhaps someone has been watching over Greyford, ensuring its secrets remain undisturbed. The wind whispers tales of old through the gaps in the Greyford Hall, rustling the papers on the notice board until a lone candle flickers to life, chasing away the shadows. Inside the hall, a figure sits hunched over a table, their face obscured by the dim light. As they stir a bubbling concoction, their fingers twitching with an unsettling rhythm. Suddenly, the door bursts open, startling them. A young woman stands framed in the doorway, her silhouette outlined against the fading daylight. "I'm sorry, Alara," the hunched figure rasps, their voice like grinding stones. "I didn't mean to startle you, but I thought we were meeting tomorrow." Alara steps inside, her eyes adjusting to the gloom. "I know," she says, her voice barely a whisper, "but I couldn't wait. Please tell me you have news." The figure continues stirring, their face still hidden. "Patience, little flame," they finally say. "Good things take time." Lara hesitates, then approaches the table. She reaches out, her fingers hovering over the bubbling liquid before dropping back down. "Please," she urges, her voice trembling. "I need to know." The figure sighs, their shoulders slumping. Slowly they lift their head. Their face is a tapestry of wrinkles, their eyes burning with an eerie glow. "Very well," they croak, "but you must promise not to reveal what I'm about to tell you. This knowledge is not for the world, especially not for those who seek to weaponize it." Alara nods, her eyes wide with anticipation. The old woman leans closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Are you ready?" she asks. "Yes," Alara breathes. The old woman takes a deep breath and begins. "There are two types of magic in this world," she says. "Most know only one, the kind that crackles and sparks, that bends the elements to a wielder's will. But that's merely surface magic. Flashy, yes, but shallow. There's another kind, older, deeper, a magic that flows beneath the surface, shaping the world, influencing hearts and minds. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it's everywhere. You feel it in the pull of the tides, the cycle of seasons, the very essence of life itself. This is earth magic. It's patient, enduring, thriving in the quiet moments when no one is watching. It's a magic that doesn't bend the world to its whim, but nurtures it, allowing it to unfold naturally. Unlike the flashy displays of surface magic, earth magic is not about power or spectacle. It's about balance, harmony, and growth. It's the magic that sustains, that heals, that whispers to the soul. Many who hear it call it the song of creation. Those attuned to this magic become weavers of life, capable of incredible acts of healing and growth. "Imagine Alara," the old woman says, leaning back, meeting Alara's wide eyes. "Imagine being able to heal the sick, to mend broken spirits, to coax life from barren earth. That's the power of earth magic. It's a gift, a responsibility, and a legacy. Your blood sings with this magic, Alara. It's time you learn to listen to its song." Alara feels a rush of excitement, quickly tempered by the old woman's final warning. "This magic is not widely understood," she says, "and those who practice it are often misunderstood, feared even. If your gift is discovered by the wrong person, it could be used against you. You must be cautious. Trust no one. You are all alone in this, Alara." With that, the old woman stirs her cauldron, the liquid bubbling ominously. "What do I do?" Alara asks, her voice echoing in the suddenly silent room. The old woman's glowing eyes meet hers. "You learn to control the song within you," she says, a hint of a smile touching her lips. "And you start by listening." And so the lessons began, and Alara delved deep into the mysteries of earth magic. Guided by the cryptic wisdom of the old woman and the song of the earth itself. The rain fell tonight, drumming a ceaseless tattoo on the roof of the Greyford Inn. It was the sort of night that kept folks indoors, huddling close to hearths and sharing ghost stories. Outside, the wind rattled the sign above the door and sent puddles spilling over the cobblestones. Only the occasional hurried figure, wrapped in a dripping cloak, dared venture out into the storm. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of stew and old oak wood. In the far corner, by the front-facing window, a single candle burned. Its flame, fat and unwavering, seemed determined not to be blown out, even as the wind rattled the glass. From its golden pool, strange shadows danced and flickered, mimicking the wild things stirring in the night. And you'd have known, if you'd been there, that it was one of Elias's candles. Even from a distance, there was something unmistakable about the smooth pillar of beeswax. The way its wick was trimmed with meticulous care, the steady, unwavering light it cast. It was a simple thing, really, yet it held a kind of solemn magic in those shadowed depths. For the past 7 years, the innkeeper, a broad man named Corin, had placed that very candle there every evening at dusk. No one asked why. Those who stayed at the inn learned the story of it in fragments. There was a promise made long ago, a guest who had left without returning, and the belief that the candle's light would serve as a guide to lead them home, if they ever wandered these parts again. Outside, through the blurred ripples of rain on the glass, the candle's glow could be seen from the far end of the street. On nights when the fog rolled in thick and low, it became little more than a faint dot, yet it was always there. A few locals swore the candle burned slower than it should, lasting far longer than ordinary wax. Others thought it was just Cochrane replacing it often. He never admitted to doing so. Whatever the truth, it had become part of Greyford's quiet rhythm, a nightly ritual as dependable as the sunrise. And so, as the rain whispered against the window and the wind sighed through the eaves, the lone candle in the corner continued its silent vigil, waiting, as it always had, for someone who might never return, but could. In the flickering shadows, the old woman stirred, pulled from her thoughts by the insistent drumming of the rain. Her gnarled fingers tightened around the worn crystal of her goblet. She gazed into its depths, as if searching for an answer hidden within. Then, with a sigh that spoke of ages past, she lowered the glass. Across from her, the young man leaned forward, his gaze intent on the fire. The flames danced and twisted, their reflections gleaming in his eyes. He, too, was seeking something, some flicker of understanding in the heart of the blaze. The old woman knew what it was, the same as she knew the reason for her own sleepless night. They both, in their own ways, were waiting for a sign, a beacon in the darkness. For the old woman, it was the steady glow of a distant candle, a promise whispered across the years. For the young man, it was the dancing firelight, offering cryptic wisdom to those who knew how to read it. Outside, the storm raged on, a symphony of wind and water. But within the 4 stone walls of the Greyford Inn, a different kind of music played, the silent song of 2 souls searching for answers in the language of light. Neither knew it yet, but their paths, like the candle's unwavering flame, were about to converge in ways neither had imagined possible. The old house at the end of Hollow Lane had a lot of stories attached to it. It was the oldest house in Greyford, or at least it was generally believed to be. The truth was nobody could remember for sure how long it had been there. But its walls leaned slightly to one side, as if bowed under an unbearable weight of years. And its roof was patched in mismatched shades of red and brown. So it was agreed that it must have been there for a very long time. Most folks avoided it now. Children would dare each other to knock on its door. But even the bravest of them only made it halfway up the cracked stone path before turning back. The shutters were always closed, the paint peeling in thin curls from the wood beneath. But somehow, impossibly, dust never gathered on them. And then there was the room on the 2nd floor, a room the townsfolk simply called the Forgotten One. No one living in Greyford could recall ever having been inside, but the stories about it persisted. Some said it was once a nursery where the wallpaper had peeled away. From the damp plaster, and the curtains had hung in tattered tatters at the window. Others whispered that it was a study belonging to the house's first owner, a man named Jedediah Rook, who had vanished without a trace in the spring of 1781. According to the oldest tale, the room was locked not with a key but with a condition. Could only enter if you carried something that belonged to Mr. Rook. What that object was, no one knew, though many speculated it might be a small leather journal he was often seen writing in before his disappearance. But no one had ever found such a journal, nor had anyone been able to prove any of the other stories about the room true. Still, people liked to tell them. And after all, there was no harm in that, right? There never had been. But recently, things had started to change. For those who lived nearby, they claimed that on certain nights, when the moon hung low in the sky and the wind sighed through the eaves of the house, the doorknob would turn ever so slightly as if someone were on the other side, trying to get out. Then there was the scratching. Not frantic, not hurried, just patient, steady, as though whoever or whatever lay within knew it, had all the time in the world. At first, these sounds could only be heard by those who lived close to the old house. But then more and more people began to hear them, even those who lived on the opposite side of town. They spoke of it in hushed tones, exchanging uneasy glances when they did, as if afraid the sound might be a contagious thing that spread through the air like a disease. I should say here that I am not given to superstition. I deal in facts. That is why I was sent by the editor of our local paper to interview Miss Alara Danvers, the woman who lived closest to the old house. My job was to determine whether there was any truth to these outlandish rumors, and if so, what exactly was going on. When I arrived at her home, she was understandably reluctant to let me in. But I persuaded her by promising not to publish her name or reveal any details that could identify her. As we sat in her parlor sipping tea, I asked her about the noise, about the sounds that apparently came from the old house. It started shortly after the new owners moved in, she told me, her voice shaking slightly. They didn't seem to mind it at first, but they've boarded up the windows and the front door. Now, I don't know what they're doing in there, but I can hear scratching sounds as if someone or something is trying to get out. Sometimes I hear the scrape of a chair leg on the floor above my head, and then sometimes at night I swear I hear voices. Just then, as if to punctuate her words, there was a loud scratching sound followed by what might have been a whisper. "Well, what do you intend to do?" I asked her, reaching for my notebook. She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. "Stop them from doing whatever it is they're doing in there," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Oh God, I hope you can help me. I haven't been able to sleep properly for weeks." I took her fears seriously, but I couldn't help thinking that this story was going to make for a very interesting article. Then the scratching started again. We both froze, listening intently. Suddenly the sound stopped. It was then that I noticed the floorboard above us creak. I looked toward the stairs, then back at Miss Danvers, who had gone as white as a sheet. Slowly, I got up and walked toward the sound, each step echoing in the sudden silence. Whatever was up there had stopped making noise, and now an eerie quiet pervaded the room. I felt a growing sense of dread, as if I were disturbing some kind of slumbering evil. Then I reached the top of the stairs and turned toward the door at the end of the hallway. It was slightly ajar, and as I pushed it open, a draft of cold air rushed toward me. Beyond, I could hear the scratching once more, louder now, accompanied by a low, guttural growl. And as I stepped into the room, I saw the floorboard beneath me creak once more. This time, however, it was unto the sound that unnerved me so much as the realization that I had just stepped into the very spot where the sound had come from. The old stone clock tower in the center of Elderford Square had seen better days. Ivy clung to its sides like grasping fingers, and the hands of its great iron clock face were frozen, not at midnight nor at noon, but precisely at 11:59. It hadn't always been this way, in the days before the Great War, when men still walked with top hats. In pocket watches, the clock tower had been the heart of the town. Every hour, like clockwork, its great bell would chime, sending a shiver of sound through the streets below. And every child in Elderford knew that when the chime echoed across the rooftops, it meant their father was home from the mines or the mills, or that their mother had laid the table for tea. For generations, the steady rhythm had lulled the townspeople into a false sense of security. It was as dependable as the sunrise, and just as constant. But then on the night of a grand winter's ball in 1894, something happened. Witnesses claimed the clock began to toll, but it stopped abruptly after the 11th chime. What silenced the 12th? No one could say. The only clue was the tower keeper, an elderly man named Marius Finch, was found at the base of the tower the next morning. His eyes were wide open, his body cold, and a faint scent of burnt metal clinging to his clothes. For days, the townspeople gathered beneath the clock, craning their necks to see the frozen hands inch forward to 12 o'clock, as if the clock itself was holding its breath, but it didn't move. By nightfall, the bravest of them began to climb the tower, one by one, hauling themselves up the rope stairs until they reached the clock's great chamber. There in the dim oil lamplight, they saw the clock's intricate works, a marvel of interlocking gears and springs, all perfectly still. And as they searched, they found a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling upwards into the darkness. But when they called out to the others to come see, the voices echoed back strangely and no one answered. One by one, the townsfolk climbed down, shaken by a nameless dread, and soon even the bravest refused to go near the tower. After his death, the town council hired a new keeper and eventually a watchmaker to try to restart the clock. But neither man stayed long. The first went mad, babbling about footsteps on the stairs inside the tower when no one else was there. The second quit after hearing the missing chime echo faintly behind him one night, though. The bell rope never moved.
Ow.
Then the stories began. Now, on rare nights, if the wind is still and the streets are empty, some say they hear it, a deep, low chime, the 12th rolling across the square. And when that happens, you must never check the time, because if the clock's hands have moved, it means you have less time left than you think. Over the years, the townspeople grew to fear the clock, and so it stood, a silent sentinel at the center of Elderford Square, its frozen hands a constant reminder of the passage of time and the secrets buried beneath the town. Those who passed by each day hurried on their way, for to stop and stare was to invite misfortune, and even the sun seemed to slink away from it, casting the square in shadow earlier than any place in town. Children were warned to stay far from the clock's grasping hands, lest they be swept away in its gears. And lovers tried to ignore its silent pronouncements as they stole kisses beneath its brooding gaze. But perhaps the saddest were those who gathered on New Year's Eve. For once the old clock struck 12, they knew that whatever hopes or dreams they had made it through the year unscathed. But now a new year lay ahead, full of fresh dangers and uncertainties. So as the last chime faded into the frosty air, they hurried home, pulling their skirts and cloaks tight against the wind, seeking refuge in the warm glow of their hearth until the next New Year's Eve, when once more they would gather in the square and listen to the clock as frozen hands toll the passing of another year. Welcome to the most haunted place in England. Okay, I'm your host, and this is our channel. England is crawling with ghosts, from the famous ones haunting the Tower of London, to the more obscure specters said to linger in stately manors in country pubs. But few have the power to chill you like the ghost of Mr. Ellis Braid, the librarian who never left. Our story begins in the market town of Ashford, where the cobbled streets and honey-colored houses seem almost too picturesque to be real. It's perched at the end of one of these streets is the Ashford Public Library, a building so grand it looks more like a courthouse than a place to borrow books. Built in 1893, the library is a labyrinth of high ceilings, creaking floorboards, and over 200,000 volumes. For the majority of its existence, it's been lovingly cared for by the same family of librarians, starting with Ellis's father, who was hired as the head librarian upon the building's completion.
Father like son.
Ellis took great pride in his work. He knew every book in the library's collection and could direct you to the exact shelf where each one was kept. It was said that he read every book in the library multiple times, not just for the story, but to understand the paper quality, the binding, how the book smelled. He even memorized the Dewey Decimal System, so he would not have to look at the labels on the shelves. To patrons, he was always neat, polite, and soft-spoken. Dressed impeccably in a gray suit with a white shirt and a library-issued blue bow tie. Some found him a bit stiff, but all agreed he was kind. His dedication to the library and its patrons was absolute. It wasn't until much later that people realized there was something different about Mr. Braille, something they couldn't quite put their finger on. See, tucked away at the end of one of the library's corridors is a set of tall oak doors with brass handles. They might have been mistaken for the entrance to the staff room, were it not for the fact that they were always chained shut. According to the staff, the doors concealed a seldom used part of the building, nothing more than storage. But the patrons suspected otherwise. How could such a grand library have a locked room? What secrets did it hold? One day, a young woman named Clara approached the librarian and asked if she could see what was behind the mysterious doors. Mr. Braille looked uncomfortable. "Sorry, miss, I'm afraid that's not possible," he said. "Not for the first time." Clara noticed that his eyes seemed dull, lifeless. She thanked him anyway and wandered off. That night, a storm rolled in, lashing the windows with rain. Lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating the chain doors, revealing a glint of metal behind the wood. Just then, the lights flickered and died, plunging the library into darkness. Alarmed, Clara felt her way to the oak doors. With shaking hands, she fumbled for the chain, surprised by how light it was. The heavy padlock yielded to her small frame, and the doors swung inward with a deafening boom. She stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. When the storm finally passed and the sun rose again, Claire returned the chain and slipped back into the library. No one ever knew what she discovered behind that door, but it changed her forever. A pallor drained her face, and she stopped visiting the library altogether. For the staff, it was just another strange occurrence in an otherwise normal day. But soon, things started to change. People reported hearing the scrape of chairs and the rustle of pages from within the locked room. Then one snowy afternoon, the staff came in to find the reading lamps on. Steam rising from a half-empty cup of tea on Mr. Braille's desk. When they looked up, they saw him standing in the doorway, his pale face illuminated by the warm light. "Did you see?" he asked breathlessly, his eyes wide with alarm. "Did you see what happened?" Before anyone could reply, he vanished. The staff searched everywhere, but the elusive Mr. Braille was nowhere to be found. They never did discover what lay behind those doors, nor did they ever find the elusive Mr. Braille. Some believe he was always a ghost, doomed to wander the stacks forever searching for a book he could never read. Others claim he became trapped behind the door, unable to move forward into the afterlife. Today, the chained oak doors remain locked. Despite their best efforts, the current librarians can never seem to get them unstuck. And sometimes, when the chains rattle in the breeze, they hear the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps inside. Sometimes, if you stand at the chain doors long enough, you can hear the faint scrape of a chair being pulled out, as if someone has just sat down to read, and those who press their ear close swear they can hear a man's voice whispering from within, reciting passages from books that haven't been opened in 100 years. They say Ellis never left because he found a story he couldn't put down. Thanks for watching. Do you believe in ghosts? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe for more scary stories. There once was a boy named Thomas. Thomas had a house, and he had a pet bird, and he lived in a town with a river running right through the middle of it. So Thomas would sit on the bank and feed his pet bird crumbs and watch the river flow. But that river wasn't just any old river. See, it contained something magical. Every living thing that entered it gained the power of flight, whether they were willing or not. Sometimes animals would jump into the river to escape predators, only to find themselves soaring hundreds of feet up into the air. Helplessly, fish would leap from the water to snatch insects out of the air. Then they would have to fly back down and awkwardly flop back into the river again. And people were no different. They would enter the river for a swim, maybe catch a fish, and then suddenly they would be floating away downriver, stuck flapping uselessly as they went. Most of the time, they wouldn't be able to fly very well at all. It just so happened that one day Thomas let his bird fly out of his hand, and it flew right into the river. And since Thomas loved his bird, he did the only logical thing he could think of. He took off his shoes and socks, rolled up his pants, and he jumped into the river after it. Fortunately, Thomas was not a very good swimmer. In fact, he could barely swim at all. And pretty soon, he began to tire. As he floated past a willow tree, he reached out to grab onto a branch, but his fingers slipped and he lost his grip. Just as he was about to go under, though, something grabbed him and pulled him up onto the bank. Panting and exhausted, he looked around to see what had saved him, but he saw nothing. Suddenly, a twig snapped behind him and he whirled around. There standing over him was an old woman with a wooden staff. She looked at Thomas sternly and asked him why he was in her river. Thomas stammered and apologized, explaining about his bird. The old woman listened patiently, and when he was finished, she simply nodded.
Ow.
Then she handed him a small clay pot and told him to follow her. She led him deep into the forest until they came to a clearing where a massive willow tree grew. Its branches spread wide and its leaves whispered secrets to the wind. The old woman gestured to the tree and said, "That is the heart willow. Go to it now." Confused, but trusting the old woman's help, Thomas did as he was told. As he approached, he saw that the willow's branches were filled with birds, all of them struggling to free their wings from the sticky sap that held them fast. Realizing what he had to do, Thomas opened the clay pot and poured its contents over the branches. The sap melted away and the birds soared into the air, chirping joyfully. And then, as if thanking him, one of them landed on Thomas's shoulder and gave him a small, gentle peck. Suddenly, Thomas felt his legs growing lighter, his arms longer, his muscles more flexible. When he flapped his arms, he felt himself rising into the air. The old woman smiled kindly and said, "The heart willow feeds on sadness. By helping others, you have given it purpose. Now it will help you." And with that, Thomas took off into the sky, soaring after his bird and feeling free. The wind howled like a hungry wolf, rattling the shutters of the house on the hill. Rain lashed against the windows, blurring the lights inside into hazy halos. 10-year-old Finnegan huddled deeper under his blankets, willing the storm to pass. But then a new sound reached his ears, tapping, tapping, and then a voice. "Is anyone home?" The voice came from the other side of the window. Startled, Finnegan crept closer. There, outlined in the silver moonlight, was a man. He wore a long, dark coat, pulled low over his face. In his gloved hand, he held an umbrella, shielding something in his other arm. "Hello?" The voice called out again, softer this time, more pleading. Hesitantly, Finnegan pushed aside the curtains and called back, "Who's there?" The man raised his head, and for a moment, Finnegan saw the wild gleam in his eyes and the blood staining his white gloves. Then he dropped his arm, hiding whatever he was holding. "It's all right, child," he rasped, his voice like gravel grinding on bone. "I mean you no harm. I just need shelter from the storm. Please, can I come in?" Puzzled, but feeling sorry for the stranger, Finnegan unlatched the window. "Come quickly," the man said, scrambling through. "There isn't much time." Moments later, he was inside, pulling his hood back to reveal a face pale as chalk, with eyes that burned like hot coals. Introduced himself as Silas, a traveler caught in the storm. But even as he spoke, Finnegan noticed something strange. Whatever Silas had been hiding in his arms wasn't dry under his coat, nor were his gloves. Blood stained them, but they weren't his. They were too small. With a start, Finnegan realized they were a child's gloves. And then Silas did something that made Finnegan's blood run cold. As the fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls, Silas removed his gloves and laid them on the table. In the flickering light, Finnegan saw that they weren't just stained with blood, they were covered with it. Etched into the palms were two sets of tiny fingers, forever reaching, forever grasping, but never touching. In the quiet room, the only sound was the rain. Outside, the storm had reached its peak. Suddenly, the window burst open. The wind roared in, extinguishing the candles and plunging the room into darkness. A cold, skeletal hand clamped over Finnegan's mouth, stifling his scream. Another hand, equally frigid, wrapped around his ankle, yanking him off the stool. Scrambling back, he tripped over the rug, sending a vase crashing to the floor. In the sudden silence, he could hear his own ragged breathing and the sound of scraping metal. Slowly, his eyes adjusted to the gloom. He saw a hunched figure at the hearth, stirring the dying embers with a rusted poker. "Who are you?" he whispered, his voice shaking. The figure straightened, revealing a face twisted with age and madness. His eyes glittered with a terrible light. "I am," he rasped, "the collector of lost souls." He took a step toward Finnegan, his skeletal hand outstretched. "And you, little one, are overdue." Panicked, Finnegan scrambled away, knocking over a chair. The old man chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. "Nowhere to hide now," he croaked, advancing on Finnegan. But as he moved, his foot snagged on the rug, sending him sprawling. In the struggle to get up, he knocked the oil lamp off the mantel. It fell, striking the poker, sending sparks flying. Screaming, Finnegan ran, tearing open the window and plunging into the storm. Behind him, he heard the old man's enraged shouts and the crash of shattering glass. Rain buffeted his face, the wind tore at his clothes, but he didn't care. He ran, and he ran until he collapsed, shivering and breathless, at the edge of the whispering woods. There, beneath the gnarled branches of an ancient oak, he hid, knowing that whatever had come for him had not found him worthy. Yet, for deep in the woods, beneath the gnarled roots of the oak tree, something stirred. It sensed the boy's fear, and it liked what it smelled. "I have a question for you." "Hi, I'm here with a spooky story for you. It's one of my favorite segments. Let's get into it." It isn't marked on any map, but if you walk far enough down Old Briar Lane on a foggy night, you might see through the mist a faint light, a tall, arched window glowing gold. It beckons to you, promising warmth and light, and the promise of knowledge beyond mortal understanding. A small sign hangs above the door. The library that waits for you. Old Briar Lane is a street of secrets. Its houses huddle close, whispering tales of the dead and dying. It was built on the edge of town, a place where the soil is hard and thin, where nothing grows and the wind bites deep.
Yes.
Most folk avoid it, even in daylight. Few know its secrets. Fewer still care. But if you find yourself walking down Old Briar Lane on a foggy night, and if you see that light, then you are meant to go there. Push open the heavy oak door and step inside. The air is warm and smells faintly of dust and candle wax. A fire crackles merrily in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Before you stretches a room of towering shelves, each crammed with hundreds of ancient books. All are bound in leather and all are impossibly old. Behind the desk sits a librarian. They wear a dark green coat and their face is pale, almost white, with ink-black hair and eyes like polished obsidian. They do not look up as you enter. You will not be asked your name. You will not be told where to sit. Instead, the librarian will vanish into the shadowy depths of the stacks and return with a single book. It will be bound in a color you have never seen before, a shade of crimson like fresh blood, a verdant green like the heart of spring, an icy blue like winter frost. But when you open it, the first page will be blank. And when you turn it, the next will be blank as well. And you will think you have been given an empty book until you turn to the third page. Then, in a spidery script that seems to writhe on the page like a living thing, you will read your life story. It will start at the beginning, your birth, your parents, the house you grew up in. It will take you through school days, triumphs and heartbreaks, loves and losses, hopes and dreams. It will tell you things you have forgotten and things you never knew. Every thought you've ever kept from others, every secret sin, every hidden sorrow, every shameful desire, every moment of joy, every stolen kiss, everything you have ever known or done or dreamed will be laid bare. If you try to touch the words, they will feel cold as ice or burn like fire. If you try to tear the pages, they will be as impervious to harm as the skin of a star. The book will not make sense. Entire sections will be missing, and others will repeat. Some pages will feel familiar, but you won't know why. Others will be utterly alien. Then suddenly the narrative will shift, and the rest of the book will be about the future, about things that haven't happened yet. And the entries will be written in the most precise detail. Sometimes only seconds will pass between the last. Entry about something you have never experienced, and the next one that will happen in the future. In this way, the book will take you from your birth to the exact moment of your death. When you reach the final page, the ink will still be wet. And in that final entry, you will read about how you will die. Cause, the time, the place, who will witness it. Some people slam the book shut before they reach it. Some can't help themselves. They read to the end because they are curious, or perhaps because they welcome death. The ones who read to the end always leave quickly, walking faster and faster until they are gone from Old Briar Lane. But the librarian knows they'll be back. They always come back on the exact day and hour written on the final page, holding the book in their hands like a shield. When they do, a new volume appears on the shelf behind them, bound in the same impossible colors and bearing their name written in silver ink. They take it and vanish into the mist and the fog, leaving the heavy oak door swinging gently in the breeze. If you are ever walking down Old Briar Lane and see a light shining through the mist, then go to it. If you are curious or perhaps you are tired of living, just remember, if you enter the library, you will not leave empty-handed. Thanks for listening. If you liked this modern horror story, stay tuned for more. Till next time, don't read too much into tea leaves because some stories aren't meant for us to find. Ah, yes. Yes, I remember this story now. Heard it before. Did you write it down? I think I did. I could be wrong, though. This isn't a story where I can just tell you who the author was and give you a full summary and all that kind of neat stuff. This is a story where we're going to have to go through the same experience you did, starting from the beginning. You're driving home late from a trip. Your phone's dead, and you're too cheap to stay at a nice hotel. So you're looking for something cheap nearby. You find the perfect place, an old hotel in the center of the city. The kind with peeling wallpaper and brass keys instead of key cards, and a faint smell of mildew in the hallways. You get the key from the front desk clerk, who gives you a strange look. He warns you about the drafts and says you should probably pack some warmer clothes for tomorrow night because it's gone. Nah, be freezing. You're fine. You're used to sleeping in your car. You make your way up the stairs to your room, which is hot and stuffy. After struggling off your jacket, you take a quick look around. The room isn't much to look at, but it's clean and it's got a lock, which is all you really need. You crawl into bed and fall asleep. When you wake up, it's still dark outside. You look over to your bedside table and notice an ornate picture frame. You pick it up and dust it off. It's a photo of a young girl wearing a Victorian nightgown. The photo itself looks brand new, but the frame is clearly decades old. Before you can think too much about it, the draft the old man warned you about blows through the window, causing your curtains to slam shut. Shivering, you pull on your warmest clothes. Outside, the wind is sharp and the sky is overcast. But it's still fairly early, so you decide to take a walk until breakfast opens. As you round the corner, you notice what looks like a brand new door at the end of the top floor hallway. It wasn't there yesterday. You try the handle. It's unlocked. You push the door open and step through. The air on the other side is unnaturally cold, smelling faintly of rain on old stone. The wallpaper is damp and the carpet is covered with dust. It looks like no one's been here for years. You feel the urge to get out of the room, but something keeps you standing there. Maybe the flickering bathroom light. It looks like an old-fashioned bulb, but it's glowing without electricity. Or maybe it's the fact that you know, despite the windows being boarded up, you can hear running water. You're too scared to investigate further, so you run out of the room, slamming the door behind you. Now, do you try to leave the hotel, or do you go back to the room? What are you doing here? You know the rules. Please pick a choice. Okay, so almost everyone chose to try to leave the hotel. Smart move. You race downstairs and demand to speak to the manager. The front desk clerk looks at you strangely and tells you he's the manager. You explain about the room, but he claims there's no such thing, insisting you must have imagined it. Unconvinced, you leave the hotel and hurry to get out of town. But about a week later, you're going through your laundry and find a small key in one of your pockets. You recognize it immediately as the key to the strange room. You feel compelled to return. So now you're back in the room. Let's see what you do this time. You're not letting some childish game scare you away. You reach out and touch the doorknob. It's ice cold. Yes, do you open the door?
Yes, no. What are you doing? Come on, please pick a choice.
It's really not that complicated. Wow. Okay. Well, most people chose to open the door again. Braver than I am. You open the door and step back into the cold room. It's pitch black, but you can hear running water. You decide to follow the sound. The bathroom's first. The flickering light bulb is gone, but the water still runs. Next is the bedroom. You can make out a large wardrobe, a vanity table with a cracked mirror, and a bed with a neatly folded blanket. Despite how long you've been in here, you're still breathing normally. Then you hear a noise. Someone coughs from inside the wardrobe. It sounds like they're trying not to make a sound. What do? You want me to make the choices for once? Fine. You call out and ask who's in there, but there's no reply. You open the door cautiously and peer inside. The wardrobe is empty. Relieved, you let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. You suddenly notice something on the bed. A large ornate suitcase sits open. You don't remember bringing it with you. What do? Wait, why are you asking me? It's obvious what you should do. Open the suitcase, of course. You kneel next to the bed and slowly unzip the suitcase. Inside are several neatly folded articles of clothing. They're clearly vintage but they don't look like anything from the Victorian era. They're too modern. Feeling a bit uneasy, you close the suitcase and stand up. You notice something in the corner of the room. It looks like the remains of a fire, but there's no smoke and everything's perfectly intact. It doesn't make sense. Then you hear a noise. Someone slams the door behind you. Startled, you spin around. The door is solid wood, but there's a doorknob on your side. You rush over and fling the door open. The hallway stretches endlessly before you, but there's no sign of a door. Shaken, you run back to the room and slam the door behind you. You lean against it, gasping for breath. What do? It's okay. It's okay. Think about this logically. The only way to escape the hotel is out the front door, right? You've already checked all the other exits. There's no use going back to the wardrobe. That door isn't real. You can't leave the room without passing by the bed, so you need to cross the room to get to the door. You know what? Why am I explaining things to you? You're clearly smart enough to figure that out on your own. You slowly make your way across the room, keeping your eyes fixed on the door. You reach out and grab the doorknob, but before you can open it, you hear a voice behind you. It says, "Going somewhere." Startled, you spin around to face the speaker. On the bed in front of you sits a woman dressed in 1920s clothing. She smiles warmly at you. "Do you mind terribly?" she asks, reaching out for the suitcase you brought with you. "But I believe that's mine. Now what? What's going on here? How did that woman get there? Is she the one who was in the wardrobe? And whose suitcase is it? It's yours or hers? And how are you ever going to get out of this hotel?" I hope you enjoyed the story. Would you have done anything differently if given the chance? Let me know in the comments below. Welcome to my channel. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what happened to Scary Saturdays? Don't worry. This story is scary, and it is set on a Saturday, so we're keeping the streak alive. This month's story is extra special because it was selected by our subscribers in a poll where I gave you 8 options and asked you to vote on which one. You wanted me to turn into a short, and this was the winner. Although, there were several really close seconds. So thank you to everyone who voted, and especially thank you to our patrons for making these polls possible. Also, we've got some exciting news. Our Halloween live stream went well, and we raised $600 for Children's Health Fund. Thanks to all of you who donated. If you missed the stream, it's archived, and you can watch it on our support page along with our previous streams. There's also an exclusive podcast available to all supporters, as well as early access to every video, ad-free. We've got some cool things planned for the next few months, and your help will make it all possible. So if you're interested in supporting us, check out our support page. And now, let's get into the story. There's a small, winding river outside a forgotten town. By day, there's only a single stone crossing, old, cracked, and barely wide enough for a cart. But on certain nights when the moon hides behind thick clouds, another bridge appears. It's longer. It's made of weathered wood so black it seems to drink in the starlight. The posts are carved with symbols no one recognizes, curling shapes and jagged lines that almost seem to shift when you stare at them too long. Locals say it appears exactly at 12:03 a.m. and only for 13 minutes. Step onto it and the air grows still, as if the world around you is holding its breath. The river below looks wrong. Not like water at all, but like an endless, inky void that swallows reflections. Some who have crossed swear the far bank isn't the same as the one they left. The trees are taller, the air colder, the stars different. Others say they never reached the other side at all. They just kept walking. The bridge stretching on far longer than the river could possibly allow. An old fisherman once claimed he threw a lantern into the water beneath it. Didn't splash. It just sank into the darkness without a sound. its glow vanishing like a candle snuffed out. The town warns visitors not to go near the river after dark. But if you ever do, and you see the second bridge appear, remember this: the safest choice is not to cross, because no one has ever seen it from the other side and come back the same. Now, before I dive into this tale, I want to assure you that this is a fictitious story written entirely by me. However, if you look hard enough, you can find inspiration for it all around you. For example, rivers are all over the place, and some rivers even carve their way through old stone bridges. And sure, some of those bridges might look like they're made of black wood that leads to strange lands, but you'd be crazy to think that's the case. But here's the thing. Sometimes legends start out as stories told around campfires or beside babbling brooks. Tales spun by eager storytellers to keep listeners on edge as they gaze at the shadows dancing in the flickering firelight. In centuries past, before the glow of electric lights painted every corner of the world, night was a time of mystery and fear. And what better way to navigate the darkness than with a good story to ward off the lurking shadows? But here's the kicker. Sometimes those stories aren't just fabrications. They're echoes of something more profound, something that whispers of ancient mysteries and secrets hidden beneath the surface of our everyday lives. I'll admit, I'm a sucker for a good yarn myself. And let me tell you, the best ones stick with you long after the fire's embers fade. Let's take, for instance, the legendary beast that haunts the murky depths of the deep, dark ocean. At first glance, it sounds like a tall tale, doesn't it? A monster lurking in the black abyss, preying on unwary souls who venture too close. But hold on a minute. Did a renowned scientist himself, the legendary Konosuke Matsudra, uncover evidence of such a creature during his deep-sea explorations? What about the colossal squid, a creature so massive it gives the legendary beast a run for its money? And the mysterious bloop, a haunting underwater noise so colossal that some believe it must have been the cry of a giant sea monster. Then there's the unsettling tales of strange creatures spotted in the vast expanse of the Amazon rainforest. From the elusive skunk ape to the mysterious beast of Bray Road, these sightings send shivers down your spine. But wait, did famed explorer Percy Fawcett stumble upon a lost civilization deep within the Amazon? A discovery that led to his mysterious disappearance? And who could forget the chilling legend of the Loch Ness Monster, a mythical beast said to roam the depths of a Scottish lake? With over 400 reported sightings, could there be something lurking in those misty waters? Or perhaps the eerie tale of the WOW signal, a strange radio signal detected by scientists that some believe may have extraterrestrial origins? These aren't just campfire tales. They read glimpses into the unknown that leave us questioning the boundaries of what we know and what we do and what we do. Now, about this story. It's got its roots in folklore. Those captivating narratives passed down through generations that blend reality with imagination. They're the lifeblood of storytelling, drawing from the fears, myths, and beliefs of the cultures that shaped them. But here's where it gets fascinating. Folklore often acts as a mirror to society, reflecting the values, fears, and aspirations of the people who tell and hear these stories. Take, for instance, the classic tale of Little Red Riding Hood. Sure, it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of talking to strangers, but it's also a reflection of the social norms and anxieties of the time it was told. In a world where young girls were expected to navigate the wilderness alone, the story serves as a reminder of the potential consequences of such a risky journey. Similarly, the legend of the bridge that only appears at midnight draws from the deeply human fear of the unknown. The darkness of night has always been a breeding ground for uncertainty, and folklore often uses this primal fear to explore the boundaries between reality and fantasy. Let's not forget the impact of isolation. Many of these tales take place in remote locations, much like this story's forgotten town beside the ominous river. Isolation creates a sense of vulnerability and helplessness, leaving characters and listeners at the mercy of the forces beyond their control. It's this potent mix of fear, societal norms, and the human condition that makes folklore so compelling. These stories don't just entertain, they offer a glimpse into the hearts and minds of the cultures that have shared them for centuries. And when it comes to this particular story, it's a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones that dwell in the shadows of our own minds. Alright, that's it for this month. Thank you all so much for joining me, and thank you to our patrons for helping us bring these videos to more people. Also, I'd love to know what you thought of this video. Was it creepy enough? Too creepy? Not creepy at all? Let me know in the comments below. Now, if you want to help me put out more spooky stories this season, we've got some cool perks for Patreon subscribers, including behind-the-scenes info, bloopers, and our private server where we talk about all sorts of spooky stuff. So if you're interested in supporting us, check out our support page. Lastly, please follow us on social media and submit a link to your favorite scary story in the form provided. And don't forget to tune in next week because I've got another story I cannot wait to share with you. Until then, stay safe and sleep well, because the darkest hours are often filled with the greatest mysteries.